Yeah, the Realize 2 in many ways is what I would call my second stop strengths assessment. So I often introduce strengths talking to clients about the VIA because I think it's quite common sense. There's only 24 strengths. The labels are very easy to understand, but I don't have the client take the VIA. I just show them the list and kind of use it as a springboard for discussion.
Yeah.
From there, usually in a latter session, I have them take the Realize 2 between sessions. And my debriefing takes 1 hour. I explain to them how the test is constructed and what each of the 4 quadrants within the Realize 2 mean, how to distinguish. And then we look in particular at the unrealized strengths and the learned behaviors quadrants so that they, because I think those 2 quadrants are sort of where the action's at. There's lots of dynamism in those particular areas, and they stand apart from, in my mind, conceptually from what other strengths assessments have to offer. And often the types of questions that come up are clients who don't like a particular strengths label, like, wait, this says I'm weak in authenticity. That sounds terrible, you know? That really sounds awful. Let's talk about that. Or this says I'm strong in competition, but that also sounds terrible to me. I don't want to be a competitive person. Let's talk about that. And often what we do is just talk about what that label is. Like, let's swap out the label for something that you're more comfortable, or let's just unpack it. And, you know, the competition may not be beating down other people. Maybe it's just competitive with yourself, for example. And if we talk about it that way, is it an easier pill to swallow? So the debriefing is always, to me, not in the service of the instrument, but in the service of the client. And I'm looking to provide the client with information and insight about themselves that they wouldn't have had an hour ago when we started. So I try not to just religiously hammer them with, you know, some narrow view of what the assessment is, but rather kind of in some ways follow their lead. Like I ask them, is there a particular quadrant that stands out to you that you're puzzled by or that you would want to work on? And I'm happy to do that with you then, so that in my mind it's more value for the client.
Right.
But if you look at sort of like what was happening in 2007 when I wrote my first book on coaching, I kind of wanted to write a book for coaches that said, here's what positive psychology is, and I want to explain it to you. And I said things like, you should write down 3 things you're grateful for. You should take the VIA and identify your strengths. These things that at the time were really, really state of the art. And, but then I wanted to have a step forward in my thinking, not only because it makes me competitive, but because I enjoy innovation. So, you know, I started looking, where is there not much happening, you know, and it's just so obvious. I mean, there are these areas that are supposedly, you know, so central to positive psychology, but when you go talk to positive psychology coaches, you're going to get a lot of emphasis on strengths, disproportionate emphasis on strengths. Why in God's name are we emphasizing strengths so heavily?